Good morning, everyone. We are now continuing our learning in the writings of Chabad. Here we have, first of all, let's give charity for today. So not to be very clear, what our purpose is in these classes is to be charitable, to give what we have to others. So we learned in Likuti Torah, we learned about being happy, and it says that the Jewish people are supposed to be happy, and you're supposed to be happy serving God. There's even a saying from the Arizal, the holy Rebbe Yitzchak Luria, that was the founder, if you want to call it, modern day Kabbalah, lived about 400 years ago, and he said that we have to be happier than Rove call. That's the sentence that says, similar to Levav Rove call. You have to be happier than even the knowledge that you're going to go to heaven. Let's say people knew for sure they were going to go to heaven. So you have all these religions in the world that people just go berserk. They'll do anything to go to heaven, right? That's the motivating factor in their life and what gets them enthusiastic and cheering and yelling. And they make wars and they make all sorts of this. And they're willing to suffer in order to go to heaven, which heaven is, in fact, there is such a thing as heaven. And it's very inspiring, very worthwhile, tremendously valuable and pleasurable. And it's absolutely nothing compared to, it's like monopoly money. I mean, you feel good when you win Monopoly. I remember playing Monopoly. I don't know how long ago. I was a little child. So I feel really good if you get some Monopoly money. But real money is incomparable, right? Well, here we have, that's at least, both of those are in this world. But heaven, the pleasures of heaven are nothing compared to the pleasures of doing a commandment or doing what God wants. Nothing. Incomparable. Because heavens are just a part of the creation, a ray of the creator, if you want to call it. And Torah and the commandments are the essence of the creator. Okay, but in order to come to appreciate this, we're human beings, after all, we're human beings. It says even the angels don't appreciate God. They appreciate more than we do. So how can we possibly appreciate God? So that's the idea of prayer. First of all, there's prayer. And by prayer, we're not just talking about beseeching, requesting God, please God, give me a feeling. That's also something good. But here the Rebbe is talking about appreciating God, like to take the learning from a person who does appreciate, really true does appreciate God. A person who really saw God and felt God every moment of his life. Oh, and who was that person? King David. King David, he really appreciated God every instant of his life. He felt and he appreciated God. You read the Psalms of King David, and 80% of them are just suffering. He's just running around, and his enemies are trying to kill him. So, what type of an experience is that? Okay, that's not the type of an experience that we want. That's for sure. But that's also an experience of God. But there's also a lot of Psalms where King David expresses positively what he feels about God when he's not being pursued or when he's not being chased or whatever it is, when his life is not in danger, or he's not being, how do you say, disappointed by his friends. There's times when King David really praised God, and he was inspired by the feeling, his awareness of God, and those are the psalms that we say before we actually begin what's called the main body of our prayer in the morning. And there we're talking about also the men of the great assembly. This is these great people like Ezra Hasofer and Mordechai and Daniel. They were part of what's called the men of the great assembly, and they also wrote praises of God, which are designed to give us also a feeling of what God is. So when we think about this, we feel about God, then we can come to a tremendous happiness. And the happiness is also like a happiness that can empower you to do things, like soldiers before they went into battle. So they're inspired, they'll be happy, right? In football games, whatever it is, sports games, they have, the boxers, they have in the corner, their manager gives them pep talks and gives them, you can do it, you can do it. It makes them feel positive. That's what happiness is a positive, super, super positive feeling. Well, being positive to serve God is even more, but you have to think about it. So it says there's two things involved over here. One is thinking about God, and the other one, well, actually, there's three. Thinking about God until you understand a little bit, doing the Torah and the commandments, and also being inspired from God, that God answers from above. Here he says that's the whole thing of the Jewish people. Here we go. That's what the Jewish people are called, Yishrei Lev. Yishrei Lev. And it says, Yismachu Yishrei Lev. It says, that's the whole idea of the time of arousal of love. You realize how precious God is and how lucky we are to be able to be attached to him. That makes a tremendous happiness. But this is the idea of the arousal of love in prayer and in Torah that comes after you pray. Azai, then the simcha is easier. You've prayed to God. And that's why the Jewish people, they were given all these revelations of God before they left Egypt, because they didn't want to leave Egypt. The Jews did not want to leave Egypt. But God gave them all this positivity, revelations of positive, how God is with them, he's fighting with them. It didn't really help that much. I mean, they kept wanting to go back all the time anyway. But at least while they had this happiness. But this is the Yishrei Lev Simcha. That's what it says. Yishrei Lev Simcha. It's a sentence in Psalms. The Yishrei Lev Simcha. So those who have straight hearts, clear hearts, they're happy. How do you clear out your heart? It says, well, when God put us into the world, our soul into a body, as the body has urges of its own. And the body is uncertain if those urges will be filled. And that's what makes you selfish, and that's what makes you not happy. But happiness twists your heart. All of a sudden your heart is detoured to thinking about yourself. But once you start thinking about the Creator, and you come an appreciation of the Creator, and you do Torah and the commandments, and God helps you. That's the idea of what the Jewish people are. Yishrei Lev, your heart becomes straight to the truth, and that gives you happiness. What is reality over here? What's really going on? Who's really creating the world? Who's really creating me? Who's creating my body? Like it says, Asher Asasa Elokim Yashar, that God made man straight. That's the idea of Yisrael. That's the idea of the Jewish people. Yisrael means Yashar Kale, straight to God. That's what it means. The people who are straight hearts, Yisrael, they're happy. Huh? So, okay, this is obviously easier said than done. But on the other hand, once it is done, and there are people that have done this, like I say, King David, etc. So thank God that they said it, right? That they said that they're telling us that there is such a thing as God, and God makes you, and it'll make you happy to feel God. And in fact, there isn't anything else except for God. God is creating everything there is in the world. But if you look at the world only, and you don't even consider maybe there's a creator, then the creation is dominant and joy is far away. But if we think that there is a creator, and you have to think about this very deeply, because the feeling, it's a feeling, God is creating me. You feel yourself. Do you feel God is creating you? No. So you have to think about it until you do. And we have the Torah and the commandments to help us. It's not a usual feeling. It's not a spiritual feeling. It's not a high. It's not feeling something of ourselves. Exactly the opposite. It's not feeling yourself. That's the unusual thing. That's the secret to happiness, is not feeling yourself. And truly, you can only not feel yourself if you're involved in something else. If you're giving, that's why we started this class off with charity. If you're giving to others, you can have intellectual experiences. There's all these Eastern religions and things like that, right, that deal with it. But generally speaking, and I don't think that I'm an expert in the Eastern religions, because I'm definitely not, but they're very self-based. Separate yourself from the world. Don't get married. Don't make waves. Don't, rock the boat. Just be placid, be clear, and then you will, get some sort of a revelation in your heart. It's true. Maybe it's true. I mean, at least it keeps you off the streets, stops you from doing bad things. But it's not very, how do you say, happy. Happy is going out of yourself, filling your responsibility to the world. And here we're filling your responsibility to God. God wants to fix up the world, and he wants to do it through us. And the only way that we can fix up the world is by means of being happy, by being inspired by the Creator. A pep talk, being, how do you say, patriotic to the Creator of the universe. We're living in God's world. We have to be patriots of God's world. Okay, so he talks about this over here. 1 second. Oh, so he says, but before a person prays, tzurich koved rosh, you have to be serious. Umariros, and you have to have bitterness. On the fact, what are we supposed to be bitter about? Hey, we're talking about being happy. Why are we supposed to be bitter? It says, because you have to be bitter, al she'en bechinas Yisrael li rosh meir. Because this level of Yisrael, namely straight to God, and here we have another way of rearranging the letters of Yisrael, is li, to me, rosh. My head is God. My head is God. And what's in my thoughts is God. So if this level is not revealed inside of you, so don't feel bad, because 100% of the Jewish people feel the same thing as you do. And you have to work at it. Maybe not 100%, maybe 99.99%. I mean, there is, huge tzaddikim, great tzaddikim, that they feel the truth all the time. But generally speaking, they don't. On the other hand, it is rare to find a Jew, if he knows he's Jewish, that'll deny that he's a Jew. Rare. Zionism tried to do it to redefine Judaism. Right? To the point where we say, no, I'm an Israeli. But except for that, in the history of the world, there was no, such a thing as Jews totally denying that they're Jews. Even the Jews that changed their religions. I used to be a Jew. I was a Jew. My mother was a Jew. They won't deny it, right? A Jewish pope. They have a Jewish pope. Here's a Jewish preacher and a Jewish bishop. And the man is a Jewish priest, and he's a Jewish pastor, and he was a Jewish this. But he's always Jewish. He won't forget that he's a Jew. He used to be a Jew. He changed himself from being a Jew. But Jew is always attached to him, mentioned him. And even the Zionists, that they wanted to say that they're not Jews, that they're Israelis, right? So it's obvious. Who else says that they're Israelis? Mexican says, I'm an Israeli. Only a Jew says that he's Israeli. Before a person prays, so before you pray, you have to be happy, right? But you're supposed to be happy about God. And before you pray, you can't be happy about God. So what are you supposed to do? In order to pray, you're supposed to pray to God. You do the commandments, you're supposed to be happy. So if you want to pray properly, you have to be happy, but you can't be happy until after you pray. You start to pray. So it's like this sort of, what do they call it? Catch-22. Can't do it. So he says, not so. Listen. Says the Rebbe, let's not get confused. First of all, you're learning Chassidut. And you're learning from a person who really does feel God. And this person is telling you how you also are exactly the same as he is. And you can also feel God. You just have to feel this level of Yisrael. What's the problem is you're looking at the wrong direction. You're looking in the wrong direction. How do you get yourself looking in the proper direction? First of all, what's the wrong direction? You're looking at yourself. You're feeling yourself. You're thinking about yourself. You're worried about yourself and your ideas about yourself and what am I going to do? And capital I. In English, they have a big capital I. I want and I think and I know. And that's nature by everybody. That's a healthy person. Thinks about himself. A person doesn't think about himself. He sleeps in the streets. He eats from the garbage cans, whatever. That's not a normal person. And you have to think about yourself. It's a good thing to think about yourself. But to overthink, to think only about yourself, and that's what we're trying to get the whole world out of, Jewish people, to think about God. In order to, detach your attention from your self, what you call yourself, and find who your real self is, yet there's a trick, and the trick is called bitterness. Being bitter. And that's also one of the tricks of the people are addicted, alcoholics, right? They want to get out of it, so they have to get bitter. What do they get bitter? They go on, they drink, and they're losing their family, they're losing their friends, they're losing their job, they're losing their money, they're losing their mind, they're losing their health, but they want to drink. They like to drink. Or they take cocaine, or they take whatever it is. They want, and they do it, but they want to stop, but they can't stop. Why can't they stop? Because they want to do it. So what's going on? They want to or they don't want to. So suddenly they have to develop a new type of a desire in the middle of this whole business, and that is that they want to not want. In other words, I myself want to do something. Don't tell me what to do. I want to do it. But once again, I want to stop doing it. I want to stop drinking. But I can't. I try myself. I take patches. I take classes. I take whatever the shots. I can't stop. I just want to drink. I just like to drink. What am I supposed to do? He says, one of the things what you can do is get bitter. Become objective. Look at that desire that you want to drink as your enemy. It's not really you. Oh, there it is again. See, I want to drink. Oh, it's really strong. I want to drink. How long I'm going to listen to this crazy voice, this evil voice inside of me that says I want to drink, etc. And that's a little bit of a step of making yourself objective. Of course, that's not the whole business. There's what's called a 12-step program. Very interesting, by the way. If you don't know what it is, you should look it up. 12-step program. Very interesting. As far as I know, it's the only program that has any, reliable degree of success of getting people out of addictions. It says like 20% success or something. You look at it, maybe now it's different, but the point is to become objective. How do you become objective about something you like? To become bitter about what you like, to be bitter. That feeling, go and do this thing. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do it anymore, but I do want to do it. So you're fighting against yourself. You get bitter. There's that old urge again. It's wrecking my life. I'm destroying myself. So that's Mariros, bitter. Now we Jews, we also have to be bitter because the fact is the whole world is addicted. The world is addicted to selfishness, to egotism, false egotism, false selfishness. You have to be bitter. You have the urge to think about myself. I get mad. I get depressed. I have urges. I have lust. I have go for it. How do you say? Just do it. So you're bitter. And the fact that this Yisrael, that the essence of God is not revealed inside of me. Yisrael, like it says, if it was revealed, I would be happy. I would have happiness, the happiness of King David, happiness of a soldier to go into battle. Nothing would make me afraid. Nothing would make me depressed. I could do my job in the world to fix up the whole world. Machmas avonosai, because of my sins. It says avonosai obru roshi. King David also said, my sins have gone over my head. King David did sins. King David was such of a high pure level that even the smallest hint of doing something wrong was considered to be a sin. That's the idea of Kovod Rosh. That's the idea. Before you pray, you're supposed to have Kovod Rosh. We said Li Rosh instead of the Jewish people, Li, to me, Rosh, that God is my head. Instead of that, you have to have what's called Kovod Rosh. You have to have a heavy head before you pray. What does it mean? You come to humility and humbleness, and you minimize yourself in your own mind. You don't have to go after your heart. Not like the world says, but before prayer, that before you pray, you have to remove your mind from everything in the world. You have to be Some people say before you pray that you're supposed to be like, how do you say, depressed. You got to be serious, very serious thing. Like in the churches, right? The monks. Life is a terrible thing. I can't wait to die. If I die today, then I will be happy. Now I am miserable because I'm alive. That's not Judaism. That's not Judaism. Judaism does not say that life is bad. The world is terrible. Exactly the opposite. Judaism says the world is very good. The problem is we don't see it. Man is very good, essential good, made in the image of God. The problem is we don't see it. That's what it means, Yishrei Lev. Man is made straight to God, and we don't see it. Therefore, what should we do? Don't get depressed. Don't think I don't want to have anything to do with anybody. Don't think the world is bad. Oh, I can't wait to die. Maybe if I'm really lucky, I'll die right now. I'll go to heaven and I'll be in heaven, and then I'm going to be happy. Right? Then I'm going to be happy. This is not Judaism. Judaism is a religion of life in this physical world. But when you're in this physical world and you're thinking about yourself, in some ways, that's even worse than death. That's even worse than death. It says, therefore, don't, before you start to pray, don't get all depressed and all miserable and think about this, right? Because it's impossible. You can't have this in the morning. Like the rabbis say, idli yoma idli katsira, she'achesed me'orer beboker the Avram. It says when the day goes by, as the bad things go away. In the morning, when the morning comes, is then there's aroused happiness. So in the morning, you're supposed to be happy to serve God. That's why really in the morning, you're supposed to pray as soon as you possibly can. In Chabad, we learned Chassidut before to appreciate. Okay, we made it very simple. You have to think about God. You realize what God is. You come to realize the whole world is just a creation. Then after that, you learn Torah, you do commandments, and you're happy, right? No problem. But it's not so easy. It's not so easy. It says, I remember once, maybe this is not the time to tell us, but I remember once I was just a kid and I was in the store, I think with my parents, and they said, grow an ant farm. Have an ant farm in your house. There was a box and an ant farm in the house. And you have the thing, and they have a picture of it, right? A picture of it. And you fill up these two sort of glass pieces with dirt. And then the ants go in and you can watch them make these tunnels and everything. And you watch them, how they work and how they live. And this. So I figured, okay, so I took it home and there's instructions, and you have to put it together and you glue this and do this and you get dirt, you put it in there. And then it says next instructions, like instruction, that's like instruction number 10. Find a queen ant. How am I supposed to find the queen ant? What is that? Find the queen ant, put it inside of this, and you'll see that they shall give eggs and they shall give birth, and it's an amazing thing to watch, and have a good day. So where are you going to find a queen ant? There's no directions of finding a queen ant. Of course, it goes without saying that I threw it in the garbage. I was expecting to throw it away in the garbage and find the garbage filled with these boxes of, make an ant colony in your house. Everybody threw them away. In any case, here the Rebbe is giving us instructions, saying all you have to do is just, think about God, realize what God is, and then learn Torah, and then you're going to be happy. It says, okay, but what are you supposed to actually do? So the Rebbe says, well, the reason you're not automatically happy doing these things is because there's three things that because your egotism separates you from God. Separates you. You're finding your godly soul inside of your egotism is as difficult as finding a queen ant in the world. Where are you going to find it? How do you recognize it? And so the Rebbe says it's not so hard to recognize. It's already there. There's three ways that you can remove all of the disturbances of prayer. One of them is go to the mikveh. Go to the mikveh. This is for men mainly. That's why Al Hasidim go to mikveh in the morning before they pray. Like we find in the Mishnah in the Sof Perachet of Yoma, that the Mam mikveh mataris atameim, Afa Kodesh Baruch mataris Israel. It says the mikveh purifies impure people. And the Riv Peragimel of Brachos, and also was it Targum Yonatan, I think. They both write, or if they write, good morning. They write in the name of Rav Hai Gaon, the low butler tefillah bal keri, that you should go to the mikveh. A man that has become impure because of an issue from his body, so he should go to the mikveh. So nowadays she says you don't have to. It's called tefillat Ezra. You don't have to go to the mikveh. Some people say that there's no such thing as tefillat Ezra anymore, but that only is regarding to learning Torah. You don't have to go to the mikveh to learn Torah, but for prayer, you're supposed to immerse yourself in a mikveh beforehand. Even though we don't hold like this opinion of the Rif, like it says in the Shulchan Aruch, you can learn Torah, right? A man that has marital relations with his wife, he doesn't have to go to the mikveh before he prays. But the Kasav, I think, Targum Yonatan, Shaladivra call Tefillah Mekubelet Yoter. Is it Tefillah Yoter? Is it? Anyway, I'll have to see what his initials are. Anyway, one opinion says that according to all opinions, okay, you don't have to go to the mikveh before you pray. But according to all opinions, prayer is accepted more when you immerse yourself in the morning. The idea of immersing yourself in a proper mikveh in the morning is in order to bring a certain degree of purity, or more exactly, to remove impurity. And impurity in this case is egotism. Going to the mikveh is supposed to be something like a baby coming out of the fetal waters of his mother. It's like being born brand new every day. That's going to the mikveh. In any case, here we go. That's one thing that removes bad thoughts and bad feelings and bad and selfish ideas and so etc. for you. We can have a little bit of a reason for this. The tefillah mina Torah, the mitzvah to pray comes from the Torah. That's, by the way, the motto of Judaism is Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael means understand the Jews. It's a commandment to understand God. And after that, it says, and you will love God with all of your heart. So understanding God properly brings you to love God. So that's the whole idea of prayer. Okay, but Cain also in the Gemara, it says the same thing, that it says that the child, whatever, he smelled the smell of someone, and he said, I see that the smell of purity is in you. It's this idea of a fragrance. That's the idea of purity. It's something that's above physical. The tomb of a Torah is makifim. It's surrounding levels which surround the person. And that's like the idea of smell. A person, even if he's unconscious, you give him smelling salts, and it wakes him up. So this idea of purity is like a surrounding level. It's called a smell, not necessarily a physical smell. It's a spiritual smell. It says that Moshiach will judge everybody by his smell. So therefore, we have to purify ourselves before we pray. And one of the ways to do that is going to the mikveh. Reach. This is a surrounding level, etc. Like in another place it says. Korbanos, the sacrifices, they're also called a pleasing smell to God. And it says by Noah that God smelled the pleasing smell. And he decided afterwards never to destroy the world. And this, the rabbis say in Perek and Nezikim in the Talmud that by what was it? Titus. It says in Titus, in the destruction of the temple, it says that a mosquito went into the brain of Titus, but Titus was the one who destroyed the temple. So so it says he ripped the progress of blood came out of it. So he said, "Oh, I killed the God of Israel." That's what he says. He said so. And a voice came out from heaven and said, "You think you defeated God? You can't even defeat a mosquito. Watch this." And a mosquito went up his nostril. The mosquito went into his nostril and it went into his brain, and it said it pecked away at his brain. A whole long story over there. I know mida keneged mida. Why? What type of a punishment was that? That a mosquito pecked away at his brain? This is because he destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. In the holy temple, that was the place that God gave a pleasant smell, korban, the smell. And because of that, so therefore Titus was afflicted in his power of smelling in his nose. A tefillah, a prayer, is in the place of the sacrifices. And the prayer is also an idea of a pleasing smell to God. Therefore it says, I pray to the Baal HaChotem. It says God is sometimes called the master of the nose. I pray. In other words, prayer is designed to give God a pleasure. And this pleasure is equated with a pleasing spirit, a pleasing smell. It says by all the sacrifices also, like it says in the Zohar. And so it's therefore you have to have, because therefore the idea of prayer requires purity. You have to purify yourself. It's not enough just to stand and say the words. Listen, if you want to, you can just stand and say the words, and you can think about God. And it can also be that you'll get, enthusiastic about God. But it's less probable if you don't go to the mikveh. Less probable. If you go to the mikveh, that adds a certain amount of purity, or more exactly, it washes away a certain degree of impurity. And again, what is impurity? Selfishness. You don't think about yourself so much. But it's much more than that. It's much more than that. Because selfishness comes from a lack of connection to the creator of the universe. You feel that you're the creator of the universe. You feel that you're God. So going to the mikveh dispels this. So therefore, you have to have Torah. You have to purify yourself before you pray Torah, because prayer is connected to the idea of smell, a pleasing smell to God. Okay, therefore, the Dibra Kol, according to everyone, prayer is accepted better if you go to the mikveh first. That's why I don't really know how it is by other congregations. I lived in Bnei Brak for a while, and there was a mikveh there. I don't know if the bells had a mikveh. I don't know if the boys, the pupils in the yeshiva, go to the mikveh in Bells and Gur. I don't know. I'll ask them. But in Chabad, for sure they do. In Chabad, for sure they do. Everybody goes to the mikveh. I am looking, another place, Reishish Chachma. Okay, that's one thing that brings you to purify yourself before prayer. A second thing is charity. Come on, Rabbi Eliezer, like it says, Rabbi Eliezer, Yahiv Pruta. He gave a coin and he prayed. But tzedek echaz lepanecha, in charity, I see your face, God. Mipenei, because it's a sentence in Psalms. Mipenei, because sheyesh katrugim, there are all sorts of prosecutors on a person. But dani moto, and a person is always judged if he is fit. Roy lehechal melech malchem lachim, if you can go into the palace of God in your prayer. In the middle of your prayers, you can sit and you can think about God. And then all of a sudden you remember, I got a phone call. All of a sudden somebody taps you on the shoulder. Tell me, do you remember? Here, I owe you $5. Here's the $5. All of a sudden it breaks your whole line of thought. And then somebody turns on the air conditioner, it gets too cold. And then somebody closes the window, it gets too hot. And then the kids are running around and it gets too noisy. And then somebody bumps into you and then somebody says you're sitting in their chair and they said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It's not. But then whatever it is, and you don't have to have outside interferences in the middle of prayer. All of a sudden you think in your mind, did I turn off I have to call this person up. And then all sorts of imaginary, whatever it is, sagas go into your mind. What happens if this guy says to me like this? Says all sorts of kitrugim on a person. And a person is judged if he is fitting to really clear his mind and have an awareness of the Creator. And charity saves from death. Charity clears your mind. Charity elevates. Tzedakah taromam goy, it says. So there's two things, going to the mikveh, giving charity, and the third is osek limud divrei musa, working at learning words that improve yourself. That's called musa. In our case, we're talking about chasidut. Ubafran, and especially divrei musa, things which are found in the Zohar. Now, musar, the word musar means to direct a person, like on a horse, they put a bit in the mouth. It's called a musar. So it directs you properly so that you should think properly and you should act properly. And there's thousands of systems and methods and philosophies of self-help and this, and the Greeks had all sorts of amazing, really beneficial ones, right? Beneficial ones. If you ever look up Stoicism, look at the amazing, right? Tremendous advice on how to live your life in the most, the economical and practical way. And don't get angry and improve your personality. That's wonderful. Here we're talking how to win friends and influence people. Here we're talking about doing it for God, not doing it for yourself, not doing it for practicality, not thinking about yourself at all. That's what the ideas of the Zohar bring you. directing you to think about God and not to think about yourself, not to stray. That's found in the book called the Zohar. Zohar was a book written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai about 1,800 years ago, something like that. Not like the Jewish, so to speak, scholars say it was written 500 years ago. That's not it's not so. It was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai 1,800 years ago, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the holiest men that ever lived. And this is the Zohar. The Zohar is a book it means to shine. The Zohar means to shine. It shines in a place of darkness. That's the book, the Zohar. It illuminates, it lets you know what God is. Shu chachmas emes. This is what's called true wisdom. Eshet chayla teret bala. This is the woman of valor. It's a simple book. It's in the world, but it's the crown of the husband. It brings us to feel that God is our crown. He's around us. He surrounds us. He creates us. This dispels all of the bad smells that we've got. That's the idea of the smell. It's above understanding. It brings us to faith. It's that the whole world is filled with God's glory. Even without deep contemplation, that God, that you come to when you read the words of the Zohar. It's a little bit difficult, Zohar, because it's written in Aramaic, but the ideas of Chassidut come basically to explain the ideas of the Zohar, basically, but not just to explain them, but to activate them, that we feel in ourselves that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is talking to each and every one of us to activate us to feel like he felt, to feel the oneness of God and to act accordingly. By Rabbi Shimon, his whole thing was to bring these ideas into the world. Now the ideas into the world, so that doesn't have to be done anymore. Maybe they have to be explained but they have to be explained by true great people. Our thing now is mostly action, helping other Jews, teaching other Jews, improving other Jews, benefiting the world. How do they call it? Tikkun olam. That's our job, but it has to be done in a way that you know what you're doing. And that's what the Zohar is. The Zohar comes to explain how much God cares about the world, and on the other hand, how infinitely distant God is, even from the spiritual. So God is infinitely close and infinitely far. And the whole world that's what's called making a dwelling in the physical world. That's what the Zohar brings. That's why we learn Chassidut now, before davening, before prayer. The Ateret Bala, that's what's called the crown of her husband. That's the crown, the Zohar, the teachings of Kabbalah, but not like in the Kabbalah club or the Kabbalah, whatever is it called, the Kabbalah center or the Kabbalah surrounding the Kabbalah circle. Those are making use of ideas of Kabbalah, which is very interesting, right? But that's not the point. The point of Kabbalah is to bring you to love God and to do the Torah, the commandments and the Torah. That's the point of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is to do the Torah and the commandments, but doing with the awareness that God is God's will and God's wisdom, and it's here in order to fix up the world. And that brings us to that. It says so therefore the Zohar and the teachings of Chassidut is a crown over her husband. What's the husband? The husband is tremendous love. That after a person thinks, you read the ideas of Chassidut, of the Zohar, and you give charity. You went to the mikveh, and you think deeply. You contemplate in this faith, how God is creating us. He's infinitely close to us. On the other hand, he's infinitely distant from us. That's what Kabbalah explains. That God is, there's these levels, these worlds, and there's worlds above worlds and above worlds and mystical levels. Then there's the Tzimtzum, and there's above the Tzimtzum, and all of this is just part of the creation. And the essence of God, which is above that, he cares about me and you. When this can only be realized by faith. It's above understanding. It's not in the category of understanding. This simple faith, the Dovka B'Hashem, to cling to God, one God, which surrounds all the worlds, tremendous love. This is masculine. Like it says, Zecher Chazdo. And because God wants to, and we're the feminine, we're the wife of God, so to speak. And because God desires that He wants to have a dwelling place in this physical world, so that is this simple faith. And this simple faith makes a crown to the husband. The husband is love. This simple faith brings this love into the world. So what did the Rebbe explain to us? The Rebbe explains the importance of happiness in Judaism. And the Rebbe says happiness is something that ensues. It's an automatic thing. It's already there. It's just waiting for us to connect to it. And before we connect to it, it's not called happiness. Happiness is only when we connect to it. How do we connect to it? By thinking properly about God, by deepening our mind about God, by deepening our mind and realizing what Torah and commandments are, by doing the commandments and learning the Torah and putting it into use in the physical world. This can only be done through faith. It's above understanding, above logic. But it's in the ability of every Jew. That's why we're called Yisrael, straight to God. That is today's class. Here we go. Second.